There's never a perfect time to have a child. But I will promise you that once you do that, you never want to put them back. That's not how it works. There's something that is fundamentally transformative about that experience that makes you, that changes you as a person in ways you can't even begin to comprehend until it happens to you. And it makes you an adult. It really turns you into a person now who has responsibilities beyond yourself. So, you look around the world and you say, there's not enough care, there's not enough compassion, there's not enough concern. People aren't socially invested enough. People do all of those things and more once they start to have children.
Welcome back to another episode of Voices of Liberty, powered by Young Americans for Liberty. I'm your host, Sean Themea, and we are live in Sin City, Las Vegas, for FreedomFest, for America's 250th anniversary, the World's Fair for Liberty, they're calling it. And today, our guest is somebody who does something that many of us are afraid to do each and every day, which is get out there publicly and stand boldly for liberty and try and convert people into true believers of freedom. Some are saying it's an impossible task, but he's doing it. And in fact, he does it so much with so many organizations that he's given me a 4-sided business card so I can make sure I get all of his titles right. He is the host of Gracearchy, the executive producer at Respect America, the president of Agenda Setters by Downsize DC, senior advisor at Advocates for Self-Government, and the social strategist at the Foundation for Harmony and Prosperity. He is the one, the only, Jim Babka. Jim, good to have you here.
Wow. I can hardly wait to meet myself.
Yeah, you sound like a pretty exciting guy.
Yeah,
so.
A lot going on there.
Yes. So, Jim, you're doing a lot of great work getting the message of liberty out there, the philosophy of liberty, and translating it into policy pushes. But before we get into all that, talk to me. What is liberty? How would you define it?
Oh, liberty is the ability to live your life as you see fit, not as politicians or even your neighbors see fit. It's the ability to make your own choices, to pursue happiness, and that's what everybody's after. At the end of the day, people, they're making their decisions based on what will increase their relative happiness. Sometimes our choices are hard and our options aren't great, but we're still going to choose the one that's going to make us most happy. But we're definitely unhappy when someone interferes with our ability to pursue our visions, our dreams, and our values.
What if you have a really weird vision, like you want to make purple carpet-flavored ice cream? Like, surely we can't allow that to happen. There's got to be the use of force to prevent someone from doing that, right?
No.
Adequate function of government?
No, not at all. And your dream will be addressed in other ways. It's not a good idea. You're right. It'll be addressed in other ways. Probably not too many people are going to want it. But you should be allowed to explore, to experiment, and that's where great innovation comes from. People do surprising or even strange things, and new things come about. Sometimes it topples orthodoxies, and established interests are not happy about what's being shared, but things change over time and tend to make our lives better in the process. We live in a time of just incredible luxury with technologies and abilities to do things that my parents, when they were growing up, couldn't have even imagined. We've just made a huge amount of progress, and a lot of that came from people taking those chances.
Incredible luxury, good times. I mean, Jim, aren't you aware AI's taking all the jobs? No one can afford a house anymore, right? Our votes don't matter. The elections are all rigged. Things are bad, aren't they? What are people missing?
Yeah, I want to
especially young people who think there's no path forward.
I want to take a completely contrary view to that if I can, because we have things so much better. And you could just pick virtually any area you want, and this is true. You could talk about, for example, the fact that you used to have to pay money to go to a physical location and pick up one movie for the night or two movies, and you would pay something like $5 or $6 for that privilege. But now you have a streaming service. You have hundreds of choices. You can pick whatever you want to watch from the comfort of your own home, from a giant TV that takes hardly any room. And you probably have TVs in multiple rooms, which was something that wasn't imaginable. I remember when we got our first color TV. I'm only 58, and I remember when we got our first color TV and what a big deal that was for a family. So and how much of my father's income, what a big deal that was relative to how ubiquitous our screens are for us now. And then we even carry them around in our pocket. They've become that cheap. So it's easy to dismiss all of the things that we have, progress that we have made, way too easy. But where, Sean, are things going wrong? Because they are going wrong. And I don't discount the fact that that's real. Well, they're going wrong in the places where the states intervened. That's happening in hospitalization and healthcare. That's happening in housing, right? The places where the government's got student loans, the places where the government has gotten most deeply invested and say, hey, why don't we lift the burden off of your shoulders? They did that for a while for some people, but now today we're paying the price and those things aren't available. And housing's become inaccessible and healthcare is a mess. And all of these things, it's the places where the government got most involved, but the places where we were freest and people could take those chances and experiment, man, everything is better. Everything is way better. And it's time to stop crying about it, pull up our gird our loins and get out there and let's address these remaining areas where government is making things worse.
So what you're saying is Reagan was onto something when he said the scariest words are, in the English language, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. And when the government has tried to help, that's the root of people's perceived, inability to succeed today or advance in their stature. It's not the capitalists. It's not the tech giants. Unless, of course, they're in bed with the government, in which case there's comparable blame. Mm-hmm. But if the government is getting in the way of success, if the government is making things worse, seemingly with everything it touches, right, then what is the role of government in Jim Babka's universe?
Well, first, I agree with you. And here, one of my mentors, the guy that brought me into the liberty space, was a guy by the name of Harry Brown. And perhaps his most famous saying was that government's only good at one thing. It breaks your leg, hands you a pair of crutches, says, see, without us, you couldn't walk. And this is what they do again and again. They offer us crutches. They say they're going to come over and help and assist us, and they manage to make things worse again and again and again. The way that we make things better is by being able to interact with one another, by communicating with one another. And each of us has certain giftings. Each of us has certain values. Each of us has certain burdens, things that we would like to see the world be better at. And we could take our talents and abilities and get together with people. It's easier to do than ever now with social media. Find our tribe of people, and we can begin in just one-on-one, but even in groups to begin to address problems voluntarily.
So going back real quick to, you brought up things are great because, we can stream movies and TVs are cheap and products are cheaper, right? There's a growing contingent of, I think, young Americans who are saying, look, don't be a GDP bro. Think about things that are really affecting us, like our inability to start a family and, just feeling like out of place in my own country and some intangible dissatisfaction with the way things are, even if products and services are cheaper. So would you bring those intangible discomforts back to it's the government's fault as well?
Oh, yes, definitely. So I think there has been a belief that has grown widespread over a couple of generations that bringing children into the world is going to be a burden. It's going to be a problem. It's something you have to get to the point that you can afford. That no generation looked at that question the same as the current generation. We just simply had kids. And after having done it, we would prefer that we have. I just had a conversation today. It's a real burden for my generation that we're not having grandchildren. Okay, we feel like, hey, we brought you in and helped you grow up, and now we want you to be able to do likewise, and that's a real kind of issue. And so what's holding back? If you believe that you need to have everything lined up and in a row and everything put together, you're never going to get there. There's never a perfect time to have a child. But I will promise you that once you do that, you never want to put them back. That's not how it works. There's something that is fundamentally transformative about that experience that makes you that changes you as a person in ways you can't even begin to comprehend until it happens to you. And it makes you an adult. It really turns you into a person now who has responsibilities beyond yourself. So, you look around the world and you say, there's not enough care, there's not enough compassion, there's not enough concern. People aren't socially invested enough. People do all of those things and more once they start to have children. And they do them profoundly and well. And they start to actually impact real lives in ways that matter. And unlike your government, which tries to pretend to be your parent but takes money from you and tells you what to do, you try to teach your children how to be independent, and you spend your money to do it. You sacrifice and give to them. It changes who you are as a person. I'm keenly aware that there are problems in the dating world right now, that there's problems in how people are getting together, that there are these concerns, but the social structures that we had to address these things, they have been all corrupted by politics. And we've gotten more and more focused on politics, and we've divided each other over politics to the point where people won't date somebody of a different view on a dating app. When I got married, I married a labor union Democrat's daughter. I was a conservative Republican at the time. Okay, it worked out. 32 years later, 3 kids later, homeschool later, it worked out. And you learn how to live together. You learn how to love. These are things that you just kind of have to be willing to do. The social structures, I want to see those rebuilt. And I recognize that the state is what's actually corrupted it. And politics of late has severely corrupted it. This is not a time that's like before. Our history was different before these last several years. We're going to have to learn how to find community again. And I think there are movements that are starting to make that happen, but it's not just those movements. Literally everybody I'm talking to right now, if you're feeling these things, I'm pleading with you, go to church. Even if your faith isn't particularly strong, or whatever, just go to church. It's a great place to meet a guy or a girl. Go get involved socially in something other than politics. Listen, this is what I do full time. It matters that we are trying to change a philosophy and the method by which we govern. But the things that matter more are the things that are close to home.
A couple of thoughts, right? In no particular order, but when you think about, hey, if having a kid, if starting a family is the ultimate exercise in personal responsibility and, quote unquote, growing up, direct contrast to that mindset of, well, we're all dead in the long run, right? I have no legacy to think for, care for, shape the world better for. And when it comes to, you said 33 years of marriage and 3 kids. Congratulations.
Thank
it's
you.
incredible stuff. Does that mean 1 kid every 11 years?
No. I have a 30, a 28, and a 27-year-old.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's awesome. So tell me more about how you see community activism, or in your words, how did you put it? But there are movements to restore community.
Yeah, I think there's people recognizing that maybe they've spent too much time on their phone apps. They've spent too much time maybe even in politics. It's probably not something you want me to say too loudly because we are always trying to encourage people to participate. But probably the people that are most likely to be listening to your show right now are participating and they do recognize some of these problems. But what I'm trying to say is I think things aren't as bad as you think they are. And things have always been bad. There's been a lot of lies and myths generated over the years that things were better at some other time and we had things easier and somehow it's just not true. It's not true. Every generation has had to deal with this. Billy Joel wrote a song about it called We Didn't Start the Fire. There's always something going on, but it's still upon you to try to figure out. And the thing that matters the most is the stuff that's closest to home. So I would just try to encourage people to do that, to focus and put their primary things on that. Because you won't save the world. That's not your job. There was a man that did that a couple thousand years ago. That's not your job. So you come in and you do what you're gifted to do, and you do it in a way that you're enjoying it and that you're a part of a process that you believe gives your life meaning, and you contribute your part, and then you leave the results to God. But at home, you're needed, and those people care about you, and that's what matters the most in the long run.
Wise words. Wise words. Now, I want to get to a little bit of your own personal accomplishments and work that you're doing for liberty beyond these great philosophical conversations. So you've had not 1, but 3 bills introduced by one of the greatest leaders of liberty in Washington, Senator Rand Paul. So tell me, how did you get there? What do these bills look like? How did they come to fruition?
We started an organization called Downsize DC, and we quickly recognized in this. Get a little technical here. Public choice theory basically says that politicians and bureaucrats are human beings too, and they're motivated by incentives. They're not angels. They're human beings. They're motivated by incentives just like every other economic actor. So what are the incentives that surround them? And we wanted to focus on some levers. We wanted to try to find some things that we could do to change the behavior of the government. How could we modify the incentives? So we came up with a few ideas. The first one was the Read the Bills Act. The Read the Bills Act says that Congress actually has to read their bills before they pass them. Specifically.
Why do we need a bill to tell sitting elected officials, the heart and soul of our country, to read a bill before passing it? I mean, surely they read every single line, right?
Yeah, you would think they would, but these bills are often delivered in the dead of night, hundreds if not thousands of pages in some cases, and sometimes with notes in the margin. They're not even finished printed. And there's been even extraordinary situations where there's been one version printed for the Republican side and one for the Democrat side, as if they were all going to, say, look over the speaker's shoulder and use their Evelyn Wood speed read training, right?
So if there's a Republican bill and a Democrat bill, which one gets put into law?
No, I'm saying that's all that was printed an hour or two before the vote. I mean, it's been that bad at various junctures historically in the last 25 years.
Wow.
So
I guess we do need the threat of force to get people who have, the monopoly on force to read the bill.
Well, Congress is the most anarchic institution in the land. They make their own rules and then they routinely waive them or break them. And who's going to stop them? Who watches those watchers? So in the Read the Bills Act, which has some very specific provisions about making sure, for example, that the bill's online for 7 days so that you and I can read it too. And like your organization would be able to tell people, okay, this is what's in this bill and you should be paying attention to and care about. We have those kind of experts. They would have the time to be able to adjust that and get that information to you so you can communicate back to your representative before they cast their vote, not try to fix it afterwards. So with each one of these bills that we'll cover here, depending on how much time we've got, with each one of these bills, we put a provision in there that says that they can pass the bill and not follow the procedure. There's nothing we can do to stop them from that. But if you find yourself in the dock, Sean, you got fined for something that they passed, or you're charged in some other way, you can present the evidence to the judge that they did not follow the procedure, and the judge can kick the case with impunity, meaning they can never bring that action up against you again. So it would be an unenforceable tax or an unenforceable law that they were passing if they didn't follow this procedure. And that enforcement clause is in all three of the bills that Downsize DC got sponsored through Rand Paul and others over the years.
That's great stuff. That's incredible. And, on a more personal note, Rand Paul, do you mind sharing the lesson you learned about how to conduct a proper interview when you interviewed Rand Paul? We were just talking about earlier.
This came out just, because you handed me a lozenge, and I'm like, I'm not sure I can have that in my mouth during this interview. So in 2010, when Rand was running for the U.S. Senate, got in the car. I drove almost 5 hours to see him. And when we got there, he's like, hey, let's sit down and talk right away. Let's turn on the camera and we're going to put this up on YouTube. Well, I was already in my suit. I was ready for, to do everything. I didn't want to have bad breath or whatever when I got there. I started chewing gum for about 10 minutes before I arrived at the event. But I forgot the gum was there. So Rand would talk and I would chew, and then I would talk, and then Rand would talk and I would chew. And so that video exists. People can go watch it. I'm there chewing away, sitting there talking to Rand Paul. But you're supposed to take out the gum or the lozenge before you do the interview so you don't look bad.
Hey, and for any of the young future journalists listening right now, right, take this wisdom. He made the mistake, so you don't have to.
There we go.
Many such cases on my end, too. Always watch your caller. That's what I've learned.
Yes.
I did a great big interview with Fox Radio once with video, and, my collar was coming over the suit, and my neck was all, it was ridiculous. So, again, we made the mistake, so you don't have to. But tremendous stuff. So you're wielding influence in D.C.,
okay,
but you're not just stopping there. You're also, promoting not just the basic philosophies of liberty, but the more complex ones, and disseminating them into a language everyone can understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about your work with the Foundation for Harmony and Prosperity a little bit. You're a social strategist. Did I get the title?
Yeah.
Right on that? So first of all, what does that mean? Second of all, what is this whole philosophy of human respect thing that I keep hearing about?
Okay, so being a social strategist, it's a way to describe a variety of things that I do, most of which have to do with content creation. I'm a writer by trade. That's really what I would, if I had to go out and figure out how to start and make money again, I'd probably be doing direct copy, which means I get people to take actions or make contributions in writing. And so I did that for a while, and I had Downsize CC and everything, and I got the opportunity to come to work with the Foundation in 2019. And what we do there is we work with a variety of different organizations, and we also start up organizations. And there's a lot of things that need to be done to help figure out how to message, how to reach different audiences, and how to make sure that the money's being spent correctly. And so I conceive of all that as being a social strategy. We're trying to advance a social philosophy. So what is the best ways to do that? And then I'm actually tasked with actually interacting directly with various groups and helping them with what they're doing, or even starting new groups, helping them do what they need to do, particularly with this philosophy of human respect. So that's what a social strategist is.
Fascinating. And what is the simplest way to explain the philosophy of human respect?
Let me see if I can do it in about 75 seconds. How's that sound?
Great. Your timer starts right now. Go.
Okay, everyone's pursuing
73
happiness.
seconds. Just kidding.
Everyone's pursuing happiness. And when that happiness is interrupted, their prosperity is going to go down, their sense of harmony or getting along with other people is going to go down, and their general sense of happiness will decrease when that's interrupted. Interrupted by coercion, threats of violence, actual violence, and theft. When those three things happen, so the natural principle of human respect says that every time someone experiences coercion, theft, and violence, their happiness, their harmony, and their prosperity goes down. Every time. I just said principle, and what I mean by that is a natural principle, meaning like gravity, there's a cause and effect relationship. There's no exceptions to this rule. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care that your intentions were noble and good. If you use coercion, threats, and violence, happiness, harmony, and prosperity will go down. Well, now once you realize that, what kind of person are you? Are you a good person or are you a bad person who doesn't care? Or are you just going to get your way anyway? You just simply don't care who you hurt. Well, you might not be as interested in this message, but if you value other people, if you value human beings, and you want general flourishing, the only way to achieve that is to increase it. And that means step one, if you're swinging a hammer, you're hitting the wrong nail, the very first thing you do is stop. Stop using coercion, theft, and violence. Well, who uses coercion, theft, and violence consistently? Politicians. They offer to do it all the time. It's how they offer to lift that burden off your shoulders. They're going to take from someone else and give it to you. And that means they stole from that person, or they interfered with them in a regulatory way that interfered their ability to pursue their values, their visions, their goals, so that they are less happy. They are less in harmony now. We've reduced the overall harmony. And then, of course, it costs us all a lot of money. So it diminishes overall prosperity. As opposed to creation, the win-win transactions of the market, it is a division now. We divide up in sides and we fight in a system we call the conflict machine. You call it politics, I call it a conflict machine. It's designed to get us all at each other's throats. There's a better way to solve social problems using human respect, and that is persuasion.
If you're enjoying this episode, you can donate at giveyal.org to help us make the Voices of Liberty podcast bigger and better than ever before. That's giveyal.org. Fascinating. So on an individual level, it makes a lot of sense. If you punch me in the face, my happiness is going to be reduced. Mm-hmm. If you persuade me that me punching myself in the face will lead to an increase in my happiness, and it's a great argument, I just might punch myself in the face and be happy. So persuasion versus coercion and violence, right? But how can we have a functioning society without some use of force, some threat of violence? I mean, surely, the police force, right? They're an institute of justice, and they can help prevent others from using force against me, right? So if they can't use force, won't we just lead to chaos and anarchy and become another Somalia of sorts? So.
Right. So anarchy isn't necessarily a bad word. It's just a word. And what it means is no rulers, right? You have the ability to make decisions. So we were able to schedule this interview, and I just want everybody to know I was not threatened into doing this interview in any way, shape, or form. I voluntarily agreed to be here, and I showed up at the appropriate time. We were able to coordinate and do all that activity to make this happen. Almost everything in life is that way, and all the good things in life work that way. All the things that increase our happiness work that way. And so we can't discount automatically how 97% of everything happens when it's allowed to happen. There's just the normal way we interact to increase. So when two people come together and they make an exchange, they both walk away happier. Okay, that does not necessarily happen when you interact with the state. When you interact with them, right, as you said earlier, Ronald Reagan's quote, you leave less happy, or at least scared of the result. And so we can do better than that. I have this extraordinary, one of the things I've gotten to do as a social strategist is we did these one-on-one interviews with people. A colleague of mine, Jamie Karagatsulis, sat down with over 200 people in the greater Detroit area. And some of those people, the conversations about human respect were so good that we invited them to sit down with us a second time and go a little deeper and let them challenge and ask questions. And most of those sessions, they were with me now, I wanted them to challenge. I wanted them to come up with the toughest thing, the thing they felt the government most needed to do, that they had the hardest time understanding. And I wanted them to throw that challenge at me, because so far, every single situation, there is a way to do things voluntarily better. And it turns out we don't need any of these functions. We can actually do these things, and we could do them less expensively and more efficiently and more kindly and humanely across the board. You pick anything, that's the situation. But we start with this leverage philosophy that we recognize that every time we try to do the other thing, the simple thing, the thing that seems the most obvious, which is use force against other people, that always diminishes happiness, harmony, and prosperity.
So this actually sounds like a really fun game to play. Can we try and throw a couple out?
Sure.
All right. Big concern for young folks right now. HB1 visas. I don't want, cheap labor taking my job. Surely we need to ban these.
Oh, wow. Okay. So immigration is largely a free association issue. It's a relationship between persons. So imagine now, we were just talking about dating a few moments ago, that the woman of your dreams is actually on a boat wanting to come into this country now, but she's never going to get here because you were worried about jobs being taken. You see, there was a book Henry Hazlitt wrote, Economics in One Lesson. Most people don't remember what the one lesson is. The one lesson is basically you have to take every factor that impacts every single person into account, which is, by the way, a very difficult calculation to make, which is why I refer back to this philosophy, because I can always know that if you use coercion, threats, and theft and violence, happiness, harmony, and prosperity will decline. I know that there will be people on the other side of that transaction that are going to get hurt, and long term, that might even come to include you who was calling for that. So do these people actually take jobs? Well, no, they actually expand the economy and the number of opportunities. They come in and they need to rent a place. They need to buy food and clothing and entertainment and everything else that kind of goes with it. And in the process of doing these things, they're contributing to property taxes and other things that fund the government. So they're not taking from you. They're bringing something. They're bringing something really incredible. Sometimes it's just the food. I mean, I love a lot of different foreign dishes, right? They're bringing those things to you. And you have to take into account that full equation. So if you only focus on the one thing, you're going to get the principle wrong. You're going to miss it. You're going to say, well, I've now found the exception. But the only way you could do that is to avoid taking all of the other stuff into account. All the wonders of that image bearer, made in the image of God, who is coming to come get that freedom. And Sean, if you'll indulge me one more second, the Declaration of Independence says, not that all Americans were created equal, so that we were all made in the image of our Creator. Like that Creator gave us those rights, right? So if we view every person as the same human being pursuing dreams, pursuing their values, pursuing their goals, then that opens up a whole wonderful bunch of possibilities, and we can find ways to get along. One more thing just occurred to me, and that is the fact that I talked about the conflict machine earlier. The politicians are always looking to scapegoat somebody, blame somebody for your problems. That's part of the lifting of the burden. They're saying, well, that person over there, they're the ones that did that to you. And so there's scapegoating of people who didn't vote for any of these policies, didn't create the economic conditions that are here, but they're being held responsible for those conditions. And you should stop and ask yourself, are they really responsible for it? Or might it have been the people that are telling me that they're responsible for it? Might it be the people who are attempting to gain office at the expense of people I've never even met? Maybe I should meet them.
These are the things to think about.
They are the things to think about.
Now let's hypothesize that, for one, I'm not recently married and I'm still looking for the woman of my dreams. Let's just hypothesize. We can logically, infer that maybe she'll be coming on a boat, right, across from a faraway nation. It's less likely to infer or surmise that she might be drinking 10 White Claws and then getting behind the wheel of a car, right? So certainly we need some threat of force or coercion to prevent, blackout drunk driving, right?
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought up drunk driving. So can I share a personal story with you?
Yeah.
On Mother's Day weekend, 1978, I was 10 years old in the back of my family car when a car struck us broadside. A 16-year-old drunk driver hit, and by the next morning, my mother was dead. And the morning after was Mother's Day. So I have a podcast called Gracearchy, and one of the episodes I've talked about this story at length and explained that driving under the influence is not a crime. Why? Because there's no victim. Crime requires a victim. A victim is able to demonstrate that they have actual damages that have attached to them. Something has happened to them, and you can't fix everything. There's no way you're going to bring my mom back, but you can attach some damages, and you can say the person who did this irresponsible action caused this harm and now has to do something to remedy it. They have to find some way to help remedy it. That's what a crime is. That's how we know a crime exists. But the idea that the police, first it started off with drunk driving, and then pretty soon there were checkpoints for this stuff. And then there were requirements that you had to comply with certain police orders on the road. And, now we've got videos all over the place talking about how bad the police behave during traffic stops. This didn't exist. That's not how things were done. But the door that opened it, the thing that they were going to offer to help us with, was to solve drunk driving. The year after my mother was killed, 1979, Mothers Against Drunk Driving was started, and they have tried to continue, even though they've been wildly successful at getting out public education, which is what really matters, persuasion, a whole host of ways to reduce the ways of drunk driving. You can make a difference just by taking the keys from a friend who probably shouldn't be driving tonight. Bars will cut people off or help them get cabs. We now have Uber and Lyft as new technologies that have dramatically improved this. Like, people are learning how to do this socially on their own. And despite all that success, MAD still wants more laws, and we still have more and more police misbehavior on the side of the road. And it all started because of that drunk driving crisis. Education was always the key, and only once there's been a crime do we want anybody intervening? Do we want a third party involved in helping to settle that matter? Until then, we should thank God that our big metal objects both made it back to their garages with no harm happening.
Wow. I mean, you've thought about this more than anybody, given your experience,
Yes.
Your personal experience. I'm very sorry that happened.
No, thank you.
The emphasis on your point I'm taking away is, hey, the punishment should fit the crime, and the emphasis on the crime, the harm, the immediate harm done. Like, that is the wrong in and of itself, not necessarily the preemptive steps that go toward that wrong. So last example I want to cover with you,
okay.
And then I want to make sure we talk about the Advocates for Self-Government and World's Smallest Political Quiz. So let's say, hypothetically, there's a nation state, or maybe actually, let's just say it's your neighbor, right? And your neighbor has, the closest thing to a recreational nuke. It's a large bazooka, right? And they're building a bazooka, and they're saying, hey, death to your whole family, death to 25 Main Street. And they're building a bazooka, and they hold little family barbecues, and they're chanting, death to 25 Main Street, while they build their bazooka. You can logically put together that, when they build that bazooka, maybe they're going to blow up your house. So aren't you entitled to use violence, force, preemptive action to stop them from doing that when it might be so obvious as to what's going on?
So first, every issue of self-defense, including those that require preemptive violence, is going to be unique and special. And it's going to be analyzed after the fact, and it's going to be dissected, and probably every party involved is going to come out wanting. You learn this if you carry conceal. If you carry conceal, you learn these scenarios. You run through them all the time. Like, when is it appropriate to shoot or not shoot? So I like that you started at kind of a more micro level, because we all know what nation you're talking about, right?
Of course, Canada.
Right, Canada. Those crazy rampaging Canadians come rolling down across our border. We're in real trouble, right?
Maple syrup and all.
Oh man, donuts. So I get that you're starting there. So everyone is going to be dissected after the fact, and every situation is unique. But we actually have a tremendous track record of politicians claiming that exactly what you say is going to happen. It's happened again and again repeatedly. They have made up intelligence in some cases. They've lied. They've used propaganda. They've created wars where they were necessary because they had other objectives. And so they told us stories like this, and they got us into things that we ended up regretting. So when the war starts, or when the action's being contemplated, everybody's got the fever, and it's like, yes, America, we're going to kick butt, we're going to take names, we're going to, kill them all and leave it for God to sort out. But after a period of time, and in recent times, very quickly, we find out that this wasn't such a good idea and we weren't told the whole truth. And this happens again and again and again. And if it was only like once, if it was only like twice, if it was only like 3 times, if it was only like 6 times, if it was only like 10 times, but this is the entire history of U.S. intervention. And the only thing that anybody has to fall back on when we have these kind of conversations is World War II and Hitler. That's the one they always go to. But that hasn't been the only thing that we've done. We've been at war almost constantly, somewhere, the entire time since. And we've done it because of that one time. And so that is the exception that fails to prove the rule. Again and again and again, we have made ourselves less safe. Our large military, which is bigger than the next 10 militaries combined in size across the planet. Like the next 9 biggest, it's bigger than all of them. And then we have a homeland army that's the size of Canada's in ice, right? We spend more money on defending ourselves, allegedly. We live in a state of fear, and our politicians are constantly stoking it. And it never turns out to be true. And my great regret, so in 2003, when George W. Bush was trying to take us into war with Iraq, we built a website. It still exists to this day. I've kept it frozen in time, truthaboutwar.org, truthaboutwar.org. And we were opposing the imminent, not yet happened, war against Saddam Hussein to dethrone him. And we were pointing out things that now are so obvious, but at the time got us a death threat, got us a lot of angry accusations. We ran radio ads in different markets. We got kicked out of every single radio market after 1 week. We'd buy ads because we were scraping money together, buy an ad, and we would put it on for a week. And then this radio station would get calls because how dare we question the United States of America? And there were people changing the name of French fries to freedom fries because it was offensive. You know, the French were not on our side and how offensive that was. And so there was such opposition. Before, I wish, Sean, before these things happened, people remembered what this happened 30, 40 times before, that they would recognize what's happened. And in some of the bigger cases, especially like Iraq, they would remember that these were the things we're saying, and they wouldn't fall for it yet again. And I do believe each time we go through this, fewer people do. Like some people wake up and are aware of this, but not enough, never enough. And it's always the regret after. In fact, it's worse than the regret after. Mike Huckabee, after the Iraq war was over and he was proclaiming that we needed to go off into, I think it was Syria at the time, was saying, well, okay, obviously that's what happened in Iraq, but that's ancient history. And he's saying that just a couple of years after the war. So we need to learn this lesson before. I feel a bit like Cassandra when I'm talking about this subject, the prophet who would say things but nobody would listen. That would be my call.
So just to be clear, you do want the terrorists to win. That's
Yes.
what I'm hearing.
Yes, definitely.
No, that was very thorough explanation. I appreciate that. And good framework for people to look at when they think about the current situation, the current moment, present day wars. As a person who I cannot remember who said war is the health of the state.
It is.
And when you apply that framework, you start to see things a lot differently. So tell me about the Advocates for Self-Government. I don't have your card in front of me, so your role there is?
I am a senior strategist over there or something. Yes.
Senior strategist or something.
Or something, yes.
So tell me about the impact of the world's smallest political quiz, which is my understanding the Advocates for Self-Government is most known for.
Yes. So it's a quiz that people can take. They can go to theadvocates.org. That's theadvocates.org. It's a 10-question quiz. It's called the world's smallest political quiz because it started off on a business card. That was the novel idea. In 10 questions, you could find out where you stood in social and economic issues, and then score yourself on something called the Nolan chart, which was shaped like a diamond. And you could find out what your political quadrant was, what was your political identity, essentially. 28 million people have taken that quiz over the years. I've met a lot of them over the years. We talked to them about what we're doing. And now the Advocates is entering a new exciting stage where, because the technology enables us to do so, we can begin engaging people in conversations of various kinds and helping them clarify their values. We have a bias in issuing this thing. This was initially created as a way to identify libertarians. not just to help people find their political identity. And so we want to try to help libertarians find their political home, most importantly. And we want to have conversations with everyone who's not libertarians. We want to give everyone a flavor of philosophy. Now, Sean, I might not be able to convince you to come fully to libertarianism, but maybe I can get you to understand some of it. And maybe I can get you to respect it more. So every bit of movement that we can create on that, we're calling that a quiz engagement program. And we are building the infrastructure to put that in place right now.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great, because for so many folks, so many young folks, they see the world in the binary of I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, and that the party, right, is the arbiter of principle. When in fact, complete opposite. Principles come first.
Yep.
And the Republican Party of today is not the Republican Party of 10 years ago. Democrat Party of today certainly isn't the Democrat Party of 1996, right? Those would probably all be moderate Republicans, right? As of today. So those vehicles change, the principles don't. Understanding what you believe is so critical. So that's exciting stuff.
So we've got another thing that we're doing right now that I'd love to tell you about, which is we just signed a contract this week. We are about to do the most intense survey of libertarians, 10,000 size sample. We're going to try to discover how many actual libertarians there are in America and get a solid number of that and be able to model in such a way that we can reach to all of them. Our intention at the end of this stage of the process, there will be other stages, but this stage is to take all of our results, and we're not going to hide them under a bushel. We're not going to say, oh, we've got all this data and nobody else does. We are going to make it possible for every movement leader who wants this information to have it. We're going to put it in a report and make it available to people, because what we haven't had is a North Star. The right knows. They know every single housetop, who's in that housetop that belongs to them. The same thing with the left, and they're using data very, very effectively to locate and motivate and activate their people into doing things. And we're still sitting on the sidelines on all of this. I think that the libertarian movement, as it were, is a diaspora. A diaspora is a people without their own nation, right? They don't have their own territory or land that they can call home. Well, we don't, as libertarians, have a political movement or a place or even a party necessarily that we've been able to call home. We're spread out amongst all these parties because we're trying to figure out how to participate in a winner-takes-all two-party system. But what if, Sean, we had a way to begin identifying each other? And what if we all got to begin to know each other? And what if it were possible for us to be like, wait a minute, if we coalesced, we could be the ones that change the political system. We could set the agenda. I believe that comes first from knowing what that number is and having an idea of who it represents and methods and means for all groups that want to participate to be able to reach out and touch those people and move them. So that's something the Advocates is doing right now as part of the way that they're kicking off this engagement process.
That's incredible. And as they say, to be effective in the realm of politics and social change, you need three things. You need money, you need people, and you need lists, right? And so that's fulfilling the list function for sure.
Every political movement at the end of the day is a database. Everyone, right? Who's with us? Who's against us? Who can we move? What would move them? Those are all things that go in the database, right? And the data is the real valuable to these organizations. They do messaging and marketing and all kinds of other stuff, right? But if you don't have that data and you're not building it and you're not increasing the number of people, so you're looking to expand the list, the number of lines, the number of people, and you're looking to deepen it. You're looking to widen it and find all those people. And so the Advocates wants to help the entire movement kickstart this. I believe, Sean, there's 30 million of us, solid. 30 million of us out there. Now, how would you identify and move that? That's another question, but I believe the number right now is at least 30 million of us right now.
Yeah, and I don't have the number off the top of my head for how many people vote, right, on the average presidential election.
So it's like 70 and 70, ballpark.
70 million or so, you said?
On each side, ballpark.
Yeah, because you don't need 50% plus one of the electorate to win.
Bill Clinton didn't get the office that way.
Yeah, and really, it really comes down to 3% plus one of the swing voters, right? So if we could even identify and activate, 3% of that electorate who are liberty-minded and they become incredibly active and engaged, all of a sudden, we've got the country back.
Right.
Because there was a small irate minority of folks that did the American Revolution in the first place. And any social movement is a small irate minority. So that's a fantastic project. What about, we talked earlier about young Americans being agitated, upset they can't afford a home.
Yes.
You blame government. What about the solution that's being proposed of saying, hey, BlackRock, private equity, they're coming in, outbidding young Americans on single-family homes. This is a disgrace. This is late-stage capitalism. We can do better. So let's ban BlackRock and private equity firms from buying up homes so that young Americans have the chance to actually achieve the American dream and get their first home. I mean, surely that sounds reasonable, right? That couldn't backfire in any way?
Well, we've got late-stage something going on. And I'm not sure I would call it capitalism. It doesn't match what I would call capitalism, which simply means that people can own something. And, you know, in the process of going after a BlackRock, you're inevitably going to go after a lot of other people. They're just simply trying to advance their retirements. They're trying to figure out a way to make money. So the only way that that any landlord can make money is if they can rent their property. They got to make it available on the market. Housing is an issue because we've limited supply. So I am in the fortunate generation. We didn't make this decision, but it was made available to us. Both the Republicans and Democrats believed, they both had their own motivations, that we needed to have an ownership society where people were encouraged to get into home ownership, and they want to do everything they could to help people get into home ownership, even if they weren't necessarily ready to do so. They really wanted to grease the path. And so they did that. And I was able to buy my first home for virtually nothing. I paid $125 FHA assumption fee. My rates were 10% at the time. This was 1992. And we got a small house, and that was our starter home. That was how we started off our family. And so it was pretty easy for me to walk in and get a home. But because of those policies, we got to a point by 2007 that the real estate market had heated up so badly that things started to melt down and go into default. They were shoving people into houses. There was so much money being attracted, and the Fed was fueling all of this and putting the situation in place so that if you had the misfortune of being a young adult after 2008, after that financial crisis, all those little things that helped me buy a house got taken off the table. And the ways in which it was made easier got suddenly made harder. You see, when they offered the free thing, it turns out everybody wants it. And then eventually there comes a point where, like, well, we can't really afford free. We have to start to restrict it. And it didn't just happen in housing. It happened in healthcare, too. They found ways to try to make healthcare more affordable. And at each juncture, they had to start introducing things like co-payments and deductibles and so forth. Because when it was free, too many people were taking too often. When you give individuals prices, they make responsible decisions. In fact, what they do is they look at their values. They say, which value is going to increase my happiness the most right now? And then they make a decision based on that. And prices help them do that correctly and keeps everything at an equilibrium so that it can work. What should happen over time, if the state wasn't involved, is that there should be, if there's a need or demand for housing, which clearly there is, there should be something called, builders. They've only existed like forever, who come along and build homes. But what we've done is we've constricted that market. We've put more and more rules in place. This is government in action. And again, this is going to protect your property values if you already own a home. This is, we're going to help these other people certain people buy a home. All these different things have led us to a position where the supply itself has been contracted. We're not building new homes anymore. That's just the fact, okay? And that needs to change. That needs to change. And it's even harder to build the starter homes. Those are the hardest homes to get built and get started on right now. And so it's a contracted supply. That's why the housing market's gone up. Why is BlackRock getting in then? They're getting in because there's a contracted supply. They recognize this is an asset will never stop going up. Of course they're going to want to get in it because it's the place to be. We've got the same conditions that we essentially had in 2007 and 8 when we had the housing bubble burst back then, happening once again right now. Will BlackRock get caught with its pants down? Probably. They're not really your problem. It's the politicians, once again, offering to do favors, perhaps for your parents or grandparents, to keep their home values up, that are not allowing new houses to be built. They've got laws and rules and regulations to keep that from happening. So until we begin addressing that part of it, until we make starter homes buildable, legal to build, I don't know how we can talk about blaming anybody else.
Yeah. You'd be putting a Band-Aid on, if you had a big gash in your arm, you're putting a Band-Aid, small one, maybe over the wound, but maybe even on the wrong arm, right, is what I'm hearing.
Right.
Fascinating. So if you really had to, right, metaphorical or literal, gun to your head, the state does one thing right, what's your answer?
Well, Sean, I don't know if you remember, I said at the beginning that anytime you use coercion, threats of violence or theft, you reduce happiness, harmony, and prosperity. Always.
Even if it's a metaphorical gun.
You know what? I feel like you need to pull the trigger.
Oh, really?
You heard it here first. That is a principled man. We're coming to the end of our time, but I want to hear about how you've been in the lion's den before, right? I mean, us talking, right? This is a relatively friendly environment. I'm still pressing you, but tell me about the time that you got a case in front of the Supreme Court.
So in 2002 or 1, John McCain and Russ Feingold, who were senators at the time, got a campaign finance law passed that severely restricted the ability of people to coordinate with political candidates from outside, whether it was independent expenditures or party coordination. And they passed something called the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. I was involved in a plaintiff group that was called Paul v. FEC. I was the organizing plaintiff. I had an organization called realcampaignreform.org. The website's still available to this day. We challenged this case. We ended up getting consolidated with there were 11 different plaintiff groups. Our whole group was called McConnell v. FEC, and we went to the Supreme Court. So I got to take a case to the U.S. Supreme Court. I have that on my resume. And so that case was basically we made a free press argument. We said there's freedom of speech in the First Amendment. There's also freedom of the press. And they are separated by a conjunction, which indicates that they're separate things. It's or, right? Freedom of speech or the press. And they're preceded by a definite article, indicating that they are a specific thing. So they're different. Well, okay, what's different about speech and press? Well, we're engaged in press activity right here. I'm guessing that you had to pay for these, and you had to pay for the guy that's recording us right now. Like, all this stuff costs money. You paid for the space that we're sitting in at the moment. All that had to be earned somehow. And then we sat down and scheduled this event. This isn't speech. This is a planned production. This is like a publication. They would have recognized that as printing at the time that they made the First Amendment, but today we recognize that the tools are used more for broadcast. It's the same thing. It's a planned communication. Every political campaign engages in daily planned communications. They send out press releases, they make videos, they make TV commercials, they have their candidate giving speeches that have been written. All of that stuff is planned communications. So what does the First Amendment actually say? Congress shall make no law. I don't know what's hard about this for them, but they did make laws. Again, they were going to deal with corruption in the process.
You had one job, make no law.
So we lost the case at the time. There was another group that was with us at the time called Citizens United. They were one of my partners in my case. They helped finance it. They went on to fame with the Citizens United case, which is hugely beneficial and good. It's not perfect, but it's progress in the right direction. We could talk about that if we had the time. But what I wrote about at the time was that the NRA said, okay, if you're not going to, because the media was largely behind Tim Russert and Meet the Press back then, this was a media issue. They'd helped elevate John McCain. And the NRA said, they saw our argument and they said, you know what, if we're going to be restricted in how we can coordinate with candidates, we're just going to become the media. Because you're not restricted with how you coordinate the candidates. We're going to start playing your game. We're going to set up radio networks and television shows and everything. And they did. They built a vast network and a lot of media ability. And I wrote about that. The deliciously absurd plan of the NRA was my article saying, okay, the media, if this is the rules you want, we will start exercising our press rights this way. We will be you, because the New York Times doesn't have to report how many people are paying. They don't have limitations on the amount of ads that they can sell like candidates have on contributions. And so we challenged them very directly. And I think the NRA did good work on that. But I am, for whatever it's worth, very pro-Second Amendment. And my very first initiative after I became CEO, after I was a nonprofit CEO in 2001, was something called Armed and Secure, where we did, talk about why private gun ownership was good for people.
Because at the end of the day, are you really going to want to wait for the cops to come when they're breaking in your home? Or are you going to want to defend your home yourself, right?
Correct.
Are you going to want to empower, right, your children? Well, you're getting into a whole another argument about your kids have guns. But I'm saying, like the college students, are you going to want to empower a college student to defend themselves, or are they going to be safer in a gun-free zone?
Yes.
Right? These are the questions. So, Jim, to close us out, what advice would you give to young people in 2026? The college opt-out, the college student, the person about to go to college, that 18 to 23-year-old range. What would you say to them in this moment, 2026, year of our Lord?
Happiness matters, and you were made unique in the image of God. And that means that there's certain things that you're going to find out you're better at or good at than other people, and you should pursue your dream no matter what. You should try to figure out what that is. In fact, it's the most important thing. And unfortunately, the way this works, most of us have to do this by trial and error. We think we want something, we try it, we find out it's not what we want, we try something else. And you should be open to doing that. In fact, before you're married and when you're still in your 20s, it's probably the number one thing you should be doing is you should be changing what you're doing and trying new things all the time, because no job that you have right now is the end of the world, I promise you. Once you have kids and you do have responsibilities, that changes, right? You do have to think about other people first. But right now, while you're taking care of yourself, don't get tied down to anything. Figure out who you are and what makes you tick. So I was watching TV and I saw a guy on TV and decided I wanted to become a real estate investor. I saw all that he had accomplished and I thought, I want to be just like him. That guy's name was Donald Trump. He had a book out called The Art of the Deal. I did go out and do real estate. I did try things. Turned out it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It didn't set me on fire. But I was in a meeting one night, and it was a political meeting, and nobody in the room knew my name before that meeting started, but I ended up being the smartest guy in that room. I ended up knowing exactly where things were at and how to do them in ways nobody else did. And before it was over, I was the center of the meeting. And I was like, holy cow, I have a gift here. This is something that I do. And as I began to apply that gift, other doors opened and I found much more satisfying work. So keep trying until you find the thing that is you, and be happy about it, because it's the way you were made. It's part of your plan and your destiny if you're willing to live it.
Find your X factor, the Jim Babka Advice to Young People way.
Yes.
Jim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes.
Thank you for being a voice of liberty. Appreciate
It
you.
was my privilege. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to Voices of Liberty on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, or YouTube. And to learn more about how you can be a part of the movement advancing freedom in our lifetime, visit yaliberty.org. I'm Sean Themea, and thank you for listening to Voices of Liberty, where we keep the torch of liberty burning by telling the stories of those who carry it forward. See you next time.